Welcome back to FlatsClass University. In today's video, I'm going to share with you some of my top tips for finding productive fishing spots quickly. And the way you do that is you've got to ask yourself a few questions. Once you know the answers to those questions, well, the fishing gets a heck of a lot easier. Let's go inside and I'll share these tips with you. Let's go. All right, let me share with you a couple of questions you can ask yourself that will really make the map you're looking at go from this big and very ominous looking, going, oh my goodness, where could these fish be, to getting it down to just a few points on the map that will determine where these productive fishing zones are going to be. First thing is seasonal positioning. Depending upon what season you're in, that's going to move you along that map where you should be looking. Because there's winter spots, there's summer spots, there's spawning zones, there's migratory paths. There's a lot of places where fish are at certain points of the year that can narrow down where you should be fishing. Now in this particular slide I'm going to show you right here, you've got the winter snook areas and you've got the summer snook areas. These two zones kind of make it too simple for you, but it gives you an idea that you shouldn't be looking in winter spots when you're in May, June, July, and August. And you shouldn't be looking in the summer spots when it's November, December, January, and February. You get the gist of it. So that is how you quickly eliminate a big portion of the zone. The next box or question that you're going to ask yourself is water temperature. Water temperature changes with the time of day and the time of year, for the fact, because it is tied directly to seasonal positioning. But the time of day, it changes sometimes based off what direction the tide is moving. Is it outgoing water and you're fishing in front of a spring-fed river where you're going to have, in the wintertime, you're going to have that nice warm water coming out? Or are you fishing in the heat of summer and you need the evening to cool the water off on the shallow flats all night long? So the water temperature might be ideal at like 6 a.m. in the morning to maybe 9 or 10 a.m. But after that, the water on the flat is much too warm. The fish move away from the flat, go over to the depth contours and find more cooler insulating depth. So water temperature will definitely move them. So seasonal positioning will tell you about where in the estuary they are. Water temperature will tell you where they're going to be in relation to that seasonal positioning. So those fish that we're going to say are in the back in those winter zones, those snook, well, they're going to get up on the shallowest banks and get in there where they can warm up on those lee shorelines when it's cold outside so that they can suck up all that heat, because water temperature is important to them. And then when the sun gets lower in the sky, they'll slide off to deeper depths so that when it gets really cold that night, maybe the surface temperature gets below a comfortable level for them, but because they're sitting in 12 or 15 feet of water, the water down there on the very bottom of those canals, those creeks, those rivers, is probably 5 or 6 degrees warmer in those holes, and they can weather those cold nights. So seasonal positioning is going to tell you about where in the map grid the fish should be, and then the water temperature is going to tell you where in that piece that you've narrowed it down to, where they should be based off that. So these two are very connected. Next is going to be tide. So let me draw that for you guys. Tide and current, to me, is the activation of the water. So it's creating a sheet flow, like a flow of water that will activate the game fish because it's moving food now. It's positioning everyone on the flat, in the creek, in the river, bays, whatever, beaches. It sets up the opportunity to feed. It also will move their location around a little bit because now not only do you have the flow of water, but you're going to have a difference in tide height. So zones that have pieces of cover or structure that are exposed on low water Now they're going to be covered up if the tide's coming in, so it's going to allow more access. So it's going to change where the fish want to be. So once you've asked these two questions and you feel like you have a good idea where the fish want to be, if you've got current, then you can start like, okay, well, they might be here on low water, they might be here on higher water. That tide and current tell you so much, and they position not only the bait and the food, but how the game fish will go about feeding upon them. So understanding these tides, looking where the greatest amount of sheet flow or current's going to be, especially if you're fishing wide open areas. Now, there are going to be places and times and regions where the tide's not as strong. But that gets you thinking as well. It's like, well, maybe I can't fish that flat. Maybe I need to fish these cuts or choke downs where the water has to funnel through and speed up, even if it's slow on the flat. If it has to come between two bars or two islands or a narrow pass, when it's falling with the wind through there, it's going to speed up as it goes through there. So that is going to help teach you exactly where to look, where if you have a super strong tide, then you can use those more wide open zones, those areas where they might use grass flats or coastal marshes where it might flood in there. You have to just think. And these three questions, the top three questions to ask yourself in the flow chart, is continuing to narrow down the zone based off where you are on the tide. Are you at low? Are you in the middle? Are you at the high? Are you halfway out? That's going to keep putting you in the know as we move around the corner here now. Here's what's next. Well, then that brings you to depth and cover. So many times you're looking for an area that has some depth, some variability in depth. So you want depth contours that are close together, where you have shallow that falls off to deep. And it happens in a relatively close proximity, so the fish always have a back door. But all of that works if it has the right cover. Cover is a word that can confuse you sometimes, but basically it's the stuff that the fish hunt in and hide in. So that would be grass, that would be, and that could be underwater submerged grass, and that can be like Spartina that's above the water where they're going down these little drains. It can be zones where there's oyster bars. It can be zones where there's docks. It can be zones where there's just laid down trees in the water. There's a lot of things that will tune you into what cover the fish want to be. And when you put all of the boxes together, it's going to make better sense, because I'm going to kind of do a roundabout here. But I'm always looking for a deep spot that has what I would call a zone for you to follow up to a shallow spot that might lead you to an isolated piece of cover. And when I say isolated piece of cover, like there's one here in this slide, that's like a lone oyster bar. It's not like there's 500 oyster bars, but there's this one lone oyster bar, or there might be this one pocket, or it might be this one depth contour that basically makes a hook, or it might be this one like egress or ingress that goes right off into the deeper water. It's the obvious path. And when you're looking at that chart, or even if you're looking at more of a relief or topo chart, where you might come, like in this slide, out of the river, and then you're looking for something that's close to that channel that might allow them to like migrate to, that might collect fish. It might be a deeper gut. It might be an oyster bar again. It might be a ridge that they would follow off that deeper water to shallow water. So that's what depth and cover are. So once you know where they're positioned, you understand the water temperature game for the fish that you're targeting, you know what type of current situation you have. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it slack? And now you have a good idea within that zone of what the depth is, what the cover should look like close to those depth contours so that you can find the high percentage zones. Well, that leaves the most important thing, and it's this one. Birds and bait. They really zero it all in because they put the whole program into action. Now, if you start where you see the birds and bait as a shortcut, sometimes that works. But I have been to many regions, many venues where there's so much mullet or there's so many birds that it really doesn't tell you a whole lot. And I know you guys have been to the same places where you've been out on that beach and there's threadfin school after threadfin school after threadfin school, and there's diving pelicans here, there's terns here, and it's going off everywhere, and it's hard to narrow it down. Same thing applies for shorebirds. If you've ever been to the Florida Everglades or Mosquito Lagoon and you're running around on low tide and you see, especially in the wintertime, you see thousands and thousands of wading birds. What zone is going to be more productive than another? That's why I don't like to start with that. A lot of people start with that one. I don't like to start with that one. I would rather start thinking about all these other factors first. The positioning, the temperature, the tide and current where we're at. Learn where the depth and cover are based off those three things, where they're probably going to be. And then when you're armed with all four of those, then see which one of those has the birds and the bait. And that's going to zero it in for you right there. And the other thing that the birds and bait tell you, they also tell you the size of the bait, how the game fish are probably going to position to be on that flat. Where are they going to set up? Now that you've already looked at your satellite map, you can see where everything is going to pool up. Is there a contour with a hook in it, like this slide here, where on the outgoing tide flow, there's going to be this tide flow going out to the deeper water. It's going to push that bait along that edge. Those trout, those redfish are going to be along that edge. So it makes it a simple formula for you to find all of this stuff. And I'm just going to repeat it one more time. Seasonal positioning tells you where they're probably going to be. The water temperature is probably going to tell you what time of day, what type of bottom they might be on. Are they in the lee? Are they going to slide off once it gets hot in the day? It's going to tell you a lot. Then tide and current, which is one of the biggest features within inshore fishing. You've got to know if you've got water movement, because that activates bait, which gets the game fish hungry and starts positioning fish where they're going to be. That tide height, are they going to be 500 yards out off the edge of the flat, or are they going to be right up there tucked underneath the shadow line of the mangroves, or are they going to be further back in those coastal creeks up in that marsh near the pine hammock? You've got to know where that position is. And then the depth and the cover. Where are those deeper spots after you know these first three? Where are they? And how is the cover relating to those deeper spots? Then if you see birds and bait in that zone, that's probably a super likely spot where the game fish are going to post up to feed. There won't be any doubt that they'll be right there. I know I seem like I'm making it very, very simple, but it does take a bunch of reps and some experience to really dial this in. But there's nothing, not even forward-facing sonar, that's going to make this happen any faster for you without you going to the water and experiencing it firsthand as often as you can. There's not going to be a hotspots map. There's not going to be a hotspots app. There's nothing that's going to be able to tell you what nature can tell you, because the one thing that happens in this big wheel here is it changes all day long. It changes all day long. So it's never the same for any length of time. So think about it. Get out there, go fishing. If this kind of information is really making you a better angler, well, you should join me over at FlatsClassUniversity.com. There, we structure courses and we give breakdowns, chalk talks, just like this one, to set you up for some great weekend fishing. That's all I've got for you for now. If you've got the time, give us a thumbs up and smash that subscription button. I would love to make it to 50,000 subscribers before we reach this summer. Take care, everybody.